Good evening, creepazoids. So we had to push Jess off to the side. Tonight, we are diving headfirst, getting into the weeds of all things bioactive. This concept kind of intimidates folks. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. The truth is, bioactive can be as simple or as complex as you'd like to make it. This, I would consider something very simple. And as you're going to see as we go on and we do a build tonight, it's actually quite a very simple concept to apply. So don't be discouraged. But if you have questions, you're in the right spot. Go ahead and ask away. Jess, you want to add anything before we get going? No? You good?
Yeah.
All right. This is Spiders After Sunset. This is Put a Fern in It.
We have 4 live viewers right
You know, put a fern in it. What that is at the zoo that I used to work at the Amphibian Conservation Center, whenever there was a space or a void or something ugly, either in display.
Yeah, not in the enclosure, but like anywhere in the zoo.
Anywhere in the zoo, but also in the enclosure, we would just say, put a fern in it. And it would make everything look so much better.
Hey, 503, hey, Michelle.
Hey,
I don't know
guys.
if you guys can hear me.
Thank you guys for
Using a
joining us.
Different microphone this time.
Yeah,
so.
please let us know. We're a little late because we had some technical difficulties, of course, as this always goes. Right when you're about to start, things fail, such as life.
Things fail.
Things fail. Don't know why our mic wasn't working. So if you guys can't hear us at all, or if we're loud or there's an echo, let us know.
The green on my hoodie is like not showing up because.
Oh yeah, we got a proper green screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is why also this logo up here doesn't work, but we'll talk all about that later. So let's get into it.
For me, it's put some pathos in it.
Put some pathos in it, yeah. Pathos works too. Okay, good.
Awesome.
All right, we're gonna run with this. When we start building, hopefully there's not an echo, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about bioactive, guys. This is relatively. Bioactive is relatively in its infancy in the United States as far as it's applied to invertebrates. I think people tend to overthink this concept and
overcomplicate it.
And definitely overcomplicate it. You're going to see, I'm going to do a build tonight. It's going to be very simple. That's the cool thing about bioactive. And we'll get into the complexities later on, not maybe in this episode, but as we progress on this channel. You'll find you can make it as complex. You can add water features. You can add ponds. You can add drip walls. You can do a lot. But at the core of it, I think bioactive is just simply plants and microfauna with a good functioning soil. And we'll kind of talk about soil and its importance. But there's the whole bioactive concept is really to make things simpler and also enrich the lives of your animals. So something we're always talking about is animal welfare, improving their captive conditions. This tank right here, this is a Vicularia versicolor. It's probably 4 years old.
At least.
As you see it, this plant has wilted away and come back probably 4 times as we've moved around and changed conditions. But as you see, it's a happy little plant. This is a begonia, begonia Hugh McLaughlin.
Oh.
And you can see the spider's not visible, but I mean, as you see it, I mean, this is a very well-functioning, well-maintained bioactive enclosure. And honestly, other than adding water to it and feeding a spider, we don't do much. Yes, of course, being in a vicularia, we have to scrub the glass every couple of weeks, but other than that, it's very simple. So I think spiders make a fantastic little bioactive inhabitant because they are relatively clean. They're simple. Invertebrates are pretty tidy animals, despite their reputation for being bugs and being gross bugs. They're actually very clean. They're very simple.
503 says begonias come to my house to die.
So I have found with begonia, which begonia do really well for us, but they are temperamental. Like I said, this particular plant that you see in this tank has, I think, died 3 times.
Yeah.
Hasn't really died, but the foliage has wilted away down to the rhizome.
Yeah. We use rhizomatis and Rex begonia almost exclusively in our vivariums, and they most of the time tend to do pretty well.
I think the key is a good hardy soil, a healthy soil. And a lot of people with begonia or just plants in general tend to water them too much. They don't understand that in a contained system like this, things need to dry out. So that could be why. But we can talk a little bit more about that later. But the thing, because of all this, people get discouraged, and the whole bioactive approach, or let's just call it naturalistic approach, kind of takes some criticism. And it really shouldn't. I think this, to me, is how I would love to keep my animal. I think this beats a shoe box with bone dry coconut fiber. No coconut fiber anywhere in this building, FYI. Hey, Ripley. What up, June?
Thoughts on PVC enclosures? Thinking about having a black box cages build 12-18 with biofrex.
So like a bioactive PVC?
Looks like, yeah.
Yeah, especially like, and we can talk about crested geckos on this show too. Like that would, I think PVC enclosures are good. The joints definitely need to be silicone. Yes. You definitely want it to maintain water and not leak all over your floor. Which we have a boa tank right now, bioactive boa tank that leaks on the floor. But yeah, it does. So let's talk about that. So you can do a lot of different things with bioactive. A bioactive can be glass. It can be acrylic, which let me show you here. Here is a fully fledged little bioactive enclosure. This is one of our acrylic purple boxes here. So you can see the little Tradescantia in there, our mega mix soil. This is a full bioactive enclosure. So they can come in all sizes. And they can be in many different forms. So this is acrylic, this one's glass. I prefer my glass. The downside, I would say well, we talked about PVC. You definitely have to silicone the joints. Acrylic can warp if there's too much. That material is hygroscopic, so you want to be careful of how much water you're putting in there. And also you want your acrylic to be very well ventilated, which is why, again, we like our slats.
And PVC should be well ventilated.
PVC should also be well ventilated. It doesn't like to bow and warp like acrylic does, but every bioactive enclosure, there needs to be a balance between ventilation and water, like maintaining humidity within the tank. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Wayne wants to know tips on removing excess soil from a tarantula crib's 8-inch round. His H. pulcher peas enclosure only has about 3-ish inches of space from the floor to the lid.
Well, with pulcher peas being fossorial species, you want them to have as much soil as possible. If they're like uprooting the soil and the soil is just kind of like spilling out, I think that what they're doing is they're telling you they need a bigger space. We keep a lot of ours in, I think those are 12 cubes, which honestly, I would recommend an 18 cube for fossorial species. If they're doing that and they're pushing the soil up out of the enclosure, that's usually a good sign for you. It's time for an upgrade. I would never say remove the soil because they use it. That's like how they feel safe. That's how they feel good. So definitely just consider getting them in a bigger box for sure.
She's more so started to web tunnel the lid. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's another indication too. And so let's talk real quick about, before we kind of get into the weeds here, you can do front opening, which I have here, which I prefer. We use a lot of front openings for our boreals and some of our smaller terrestrials. And usually for the terrestrials, we'll slope the soil. So we'll have the soil level kind of higher in the back and then go down toward the front, because obviously you're going to run into this vent strip. With these glass enclosures, you don't want to crowd the vent strip. This is kind of like the lungs of a glass enclosure like this, because this is a vent strip and this creates what we call a cross ventilation effect, right? So cool air comes in and then pushes the warmer out the top. So you don't ever want to crowd that little vent strip. But you're about to see here, we're about to build in a little bit here a solid glass 10-gallon aquarium with a fully ventilated lid. So it all just comes down to balance for sure. Let's see. So that's also going to feed into the species that you're keeping and where they come from and what their habitat looks like. So where am I getting at here? So that's just going to kind of determine, like, do you want front opening or do you want a top opening? With top opening and spiders, I think top opening is fine, but you need the depth. You need a tall enclosure. I would say the taller the better, because you want your animal to have somewhere to go. I always say that. I'm going to say that a million times on the show. Your spiders need somewhere to go. That is how you get rid of all of those defensive behaviors. We never see any defensive postures out of our OBTs or any of our fossorial species, because as soon as that lid comes off, shoop, down the little hole they go. See ya. They don't need to react and flick hairs and be obnoxious, because they just have somewhere to go. So keep that in mind as it pertains to bioactive. More soil is usually better, which means a taller enclosure, and getting away from like the stereotypical shoebox that with like an inch of soil that you pop the lid off and everyone's screaming. Also, I want to talk about this too. We don't see a lot of webbing with a lot of our tarantulas. Certain species, sure, but even our OBTs, and I think that's again because they have a structure, they have a retreat, and they're not forced to make a security blanket because that's already provided for them. And I think that's more. We always talk about natural history. I think that's more natural for the spiders. So that's something to keep in mind too. And we'll talk about hardscaping and all that.
Have you tried putting ventilation in an aquarium setup, like drilling or modifying the glass to facilitate that cross ventilation?
Yes, and I'm about to screw this up, and I shouldn't, because that's insulting to my zookeeping past. What glass can you drill? Tempered glass?
I don't remember.
Yeah, just me. Oh, I just screwed up.
The camera.
I just screwed up. Hold on. Sorry, guys.
There you go.
Hold on.
Our camera is great at picking up gestures.
Yeah.
Not.
I wanted to stop doing that.
Oh,
I see what I did. That's okay. We'll fix it. Come back over here.
Non-tempered glass. 503 says non-tempered.
Thank you. 503. Yep, that's correct. So yes, you can absolutely drill with a diamond bit. I've done that many, many, many times.
Don't drill tempered glass. Got it. When June even knows.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed, but hey.
A little hard down. A little down.
Okay.
Got it. Non-tempered glass only. That's good.
Got it.
Perfect.
So yes, you can absolutely drill and fit with bulkheads, which I was going to talk about that, because drainage is a huge thing with bioactive. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. We're going to talk about. We're going to start from the ground up. Okay. So let's just start with the drainage layer. So the drainage layer fits at the bottom of the enclosure. Do you need it? Maybe. We don't use them at all. The main purpose of a drainage layer, let's talk about it. So that serves as a space under the soil for the water to go. In a closed system, if you have a mist system, or if you're constantly missing, you want the water to escape because you don't want to saturate the soil, making it unusable for the spider or whatever inhabitant is in the box. And you don't want to saturate plant roots. Plant roots will rot if they can't drain. So that's where a drainage layer comes in. But again, what governs the need for a drainage layer is how much water you're adding to that system. So that's, we're misting everything by hand. We don't have any water features, so we don't use any drainage layers. Also, your soil will also kind of determine if a drainage layer is necessary or not. All soil should be, in my opinion, a bioactive soil should be made up of many particulates that help facilitate draining. So that's why selfless plug here in our soil, and I'll show you guys this up close. Lots of different particulates that all help facilitate in draining, but also like maintaining humidity and moisture at some point. So when it comes to your bioactive soils, you definitely get what you pay for. People ask us all the time, how does your soil compare to BioDude or something like that? They're not the same things. That's like comparing a McDonald's hamburger to a Kraft hamburger. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but that you get what you pay for. Like there's a reason why true bioactive soils are kind of expensive and pricey. It might be more, you might think, well, I can just get a BioDude thing or a ABG for, $5-6 a bag versus why would I pay $20 a bag? You absolutely do get what you pay for. And I think every single vendor should put the ingredients list on the bag, because that kind of tells you, oh, that's what I'm paying for, right? So, and we can get into more of that later. But I want to real quick talk about the drainage layer too. So this is interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. This is what we started using at zoos. So drainage layers can be clay balls, like a little clay ball aggregate. like hydrotin, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, or Leca.
Or Leca.
That's what people use now, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if that's
it can be, there's like recycled glass. All of those things are relatively heavy. That's why we started using this. This is by Metalla. The links are all for all the things we're talking about are going to be in the description. But this is a pond filter. Their black version is very rigid. But you can cut this to size. This weighs nothing. This is kind of like a hard polymer plastic. And you can cut this to size if you want to use a drainage layer, and then just cover it with a weed block.
What's its original purpose?
Oh, it's a pond filter. It's made for filtering water out of ponds. But you can literally stack this as high as you want to go. It comes stock. I think this is like an inch.
An inch and a half.
Yeah, inch and a quarter, maybe inch and a half. But you can cut this to size. I highly recommend this because it is so lightweight. When you start putting clay and all sorts of stuff in the bottom there, your tank already is going to get pretty heavy. So I think if you're going to do a drainage layer, this would be good. But again, also you got to keep in mind with spiders too, especially burrowing animals, you're taking away space that they could utilize when you're putting a drainage layer in there, and then they could possibly go down there and mess with it. Unless you've got like 18 inches of soil depth, which we have in one of our tanks. We have a Mesomelis tank that's got a drainage layer, and it's like so much soil to where she doesn't even get down that far. So keep that in mind, but I really like that stuff. So let's talk about soil. I kind of touched on it earlier. Remember, we're going from the bottom up. So soil is, I think, the engine of every bioactive enclosure.
Wait, go back. How do you cut the filter spoon?
Oh, you can use a razor blade. Yeah. Just cut it with a razor. Let's score it. You know what I mean? And then it'll tear because it's just like a plastic. So real easy to cut. Or you can cut it with a saw and make your life easier. So, so let's talk about soil. So I have in most of these very nice mixture of things. Bioactive soil should be a series of a number of components that all kind of complement one another.
Do you want to tell them the fun story of how we made Megamix? Like a little abbreviated version?
You tell them.
Well, I'm not in the shop, but our Megamix soil, we wanted a tarantula specific soil that was like good for bioactives. That we were kind of using ABG mixes at first, and we were mixing things into those substrates. We were mixing isopod and millipede substrate into the ABG to kind of make it more what we were hoping to get out of our bioactive substrates. And at one point we were just like, why are we buying other products and mixing it all together? Why don't we just make it? So
right.
That's where the Megamix started. And then we were like, this is great. Why don't we just sell this?
Well, yeah, pretty much everything that we've always done. It's like, hey, we need to use a lot of something. Why don't we just like make it so
make
that
it in bulk.
Make it in bulk and then sell it. Yeah. But that's why we're really proud to put our ingredients on the bag, because if you guys like to DIY, you can get an idea of like, hey, I can source these components myself if you use a lot of soil.
Plus, we did want to get away from using tree fern fiber and peat moss in some capacity, at least, because both of those materials are really environmentally unsustainable. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So keep that in mind too. Definitely, if you can not use tree fern, don't use tree fern.
Yeah.
So another key component in Mycorrhizae is Mycorrhizae. So I want to talk about that. So your soil should not only be beneficial to the animal, it should not only be beneficial like as far as water retention and water drainage, but it needs to benefit your plants. So something that we've started doing is inoculating our soil with mycorrhizal fungi. So mycorrhizal fungi, it looks unsightly if you don't know what you're looking at. In the soil, you'll see little white strands that maybe look like, I don't know, mushrooms, even though mushrooms are not a bad thing.
Yeah, or mold.
Or mold. People think it's mold. And we're going to talk about mold here in a second. But what mycorrhizal fungi do is it forms a symbiotic relationship with the plant root. And it looks like little white strings, almost looks like little lightning bolts in the soil. And really what that is a safety net for your plants. It helps if you have a spider that likes to bulldoze stuff, if you like to overwater your plants, if you like to maybe neglect your plants a little bit. That symbiotic relationship really helps the plant thrive. It gives the plant nutrients, micronutrients, and it So there's a relationship there.
They feed off of each other.
Yeah, they feed off each other, and it makes the plant hardier, which is why this plant has survived so many years without much fertilization and all the stuff we've put it through. So that's I think you can buy that. Some vendors sell it as like a bio shot or like a bio booster, and that's all it really is mycorrhizal fungi.
What's the company you get them from?
Agro Supply.
No,
Arbico Organics. Yep. If you want to add some yourself, yeah, we'll throw it in there. But that already comes in our soil. It's already inoculated, and I highly recommend that if you're going to do a bioactive build, that just goes along with the soil.
Wenjun says I'm too lazy.
I know Wenjun.
So that's why you buy our ready-made substrate.
Yeah, if you're lazy, it's already bagged for you. I did it for you. This is a labor of love. Seriously, this takes a long time to do.
503 says, every time I've added Mycorrhizae to my soils, I end up with flower pot fungus overgrowth. Not sure if it's just an imbalance or the wrong species.
It also could depend on the base too. Like if you have any coconut fiber, I mean, don't use coconut fiber. It's just not a good amendment at all.
Yeah.
Again, that can be a problem. It also can come in on tree fern. So if you're buying ABG with tree fern in it, you can get some unwanted fungus.
And in my opinion, I don't mind, even when the flower pot fungus kind of becomes overgrown in our enclosures, even though it's kind of unsightly to some people, I've never experienced any outward negative effects, even from the overgrowth of it, let alone just some of the...
I have heard it negatively affect microfauna populations.
Yes, there is some studies where I think it affects the pH of the soil, which will affect certain isopod species. But in general, in a bioactive enclosure for a tarantula, we have it pop up in some of our enclosures that even have the tree fern fiber in it, and lots of powder blue and orange isopods. And long term, it's okay. Yeah. So the overgrowth of the flower pot fungus, again, it's just my opinion. We haven't done too much experimentation with it, but I don't necessarily think it's outwardly a bad thing. We also I haven't seen it often lately in our enclosures, even with the Mycorrhizae. So you might have to look into what products you're using, maybe. Yeah,
we can link you to what we're using. No issues with that.
No coconut fiber, I promise.
Yeah, no coconut fiber. It's bad stuff. Lastly, one more thing before we move on to something else. This is a fantastic little product. This is called Mosquito Bits. This is basically a biological pest control. And what you can do, you can buy this on Amazon. It looks like the marketing for this stuff. You'd be like, why would I ever want to introduce this into my tank? But all this is like a little kernel that if you mix it in water, if you just throw a few kernels in water, it grows. What is it? Just pseudo. What does it inoculate the soil with? Is what I'm after.
Nematodes.
Like beneficial nematodes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Predatory nematodes, actually.
Yeah. So if you have gnat problems or little flighted buggers that you don't want coming out of your soil, and you're like, where are these coming from? Like I see one flying around right now. You can get that on Amazon. It will last you a lifetime. You just soak some kernels in water, make a tea, put it in your soil. In a couple months, you will be gnat free. Period. It's awesome. The
predatory nematodes, you don't have to worry about them affecting isopods, even springtails or your spider at all. They're very specialized, highly specialized to target, I believe, the eggs and the small larvae of flies specifically. So it's meant to target mosquitoes, but it also works on bats. Yep.
So there's a little hack for you, little cheat code.
And we've been using that stuff for probably 5.5 years now, and even though it does require some reapplication sometimes, like we still have gnats now, but it has nearly...
there's so much rehousing and replanting and repotting. Like we have a lot.
But we've gone from it probably eliminated our gnat population by 90% in the first 2 or 3 weeks that we used it, when we had a really bad overpopulation of fungus and gnats.
Yep. So that brings us to microfauna. So let's just. For spiders in general, we just... Hey, Zach, what's up, buddy? We just recommend springtails, okay? The reason being, you can get away with some isopod species. I'm not going to recommend it. We use a combination of springtails and dwarf whites. Isopods have a protein requirement in their diet. and you could see how a tank full of isopods and a molting spider that could result in lunch, potentially. So I know it's a stretch, but I've also heard it happening. We see isopods eat each other. So I would just stick to springtails and dwarf whites if you want to inoculate your soil with microfauna. They do the same things. They accomplish the same thing.
But with that being said, we do use powders in some of our enclosures.
In our boreal tanks we do, but let's not tell them that. Because I don't want to be responsible for any of that. Just use springtails and say that's what we told you.
Yeah, that's why we go for it, just in case.
Okay.
Wenjun has a question.
I'm ready, Wenjun.
He said, what if I drink it? Will it make the mosquitoes go away? Maybe if you pee on them after you drink it.
So we're going to talk about hardscape next. So hardscape can be a number of different things. I think it should pertain to your animal. What I mean by hardscape is like the wood, the rock, the background, things that like structures the animals can use. So generally speaking, this one's pretty basic. This is just a cork hollow that goes from the bottom to the top. Notice how our tanks, it might be hard to tell with the green screen here, but we don't have a background in this. But you can incorporate hardscape into your backgrounds. We're going to do some intricate builds later to kind of talk about how you can make it all one structure and make it more structurally sound. I like the versatility. So I don't really like to adhere things together and glue things and make things solid structure. So, but that could just be simple like hardwoods. That could be cork. That could be cork tubes and flats, rocks from outside. I think the biggest thing whenever you're doing a bioactive build, just make sure cork is an exception because it's steamed. That's how they harvest it. But if you're taking things from the wild, which we do all the time, we don't cut down live trees or anything, but where we live, there's just so many down trees and hardwoods. I'm going to show you a really cool piece I found earlier. Just make sure you bake it or sanitize it to get rid of hitchhikers. Most of the time, people will say, there's like an argument to be made, especially in the invert community, that you don't have to do anything at all. Just throw it in your tank. I disagree, just because you don't. There's just hitchhikers, and there's hitchhikers that you might not want in your viv. So just bake it. We do 175 for like 10 to 15 minutes, or you can just boil it, put it in boiling water for a few minutes. Just cover your bases.
Sometimes Ryan and I disagree on some things, and that's one of them, by the way. Just putting that out there.
We disagree on quite a few things, but we'll talk, even communals, but we'll talk about communals later.
But I do just want to interject real quick on that topic, because I do think it's important. The hitchhikers that might come in on naturalistic, wood and all that, especially in like North America, that kind of stuff is not... There's no real evidence yet anyway that any of that stuff is really going to harm an exotic tarantula. There are things like chytrid fungus and things like that might be harmful to exotic or native amphibians. That's something to keep in mind for sure. But in my opinion and experience, I typically don't worry too much about baking or sterilizing any wood that comes from outside, even if there are hitchhikers on it. I found wood lice and other things, springtails even, on the wood that I find outside. Sometimes I welcome that stuff, especially for my tropical enclosures for whip spiders and whatnot. Anyway.
But to cover our asses,
yes,
sanitize your stuff.
Wait. Go ahead. How do I tell if the springtails I added to my tarantula enclosure are still there? Do I just add more from time to time until I see them chilling?
No, I mean, you don't necessarily have to see them. I mean, if you go digging, they might be down where it's moist. They might hang out where it's wet and not only come to the surface when you miss. Adding more doesn't hurt, but you got to remember that you're probably not going to see them on the surface unless the conditions are like, if you have leaf litter, which is, we use leaf litter in just about everything. If you kind of separate some leaves off the top, you might see them hanging out where there's a damp spot. It's kind of like that philosophy, or not even philosophy, but if you go outside and the surface of the ground is dry, but you lift up a rock and it's wet under there, and then you see all the bugs. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like the same concept. So just because you don't see them doesn't mean they're there or they're not there. Most springtails are so hardy. Like, we find them pop up in enclosures that we never even intentionally added them to. So I would be willing to bet they're still alive in the enclosure. You just don't see them. Yeah, but you can always add more. It doesn't hurt anything. The last thing, as far as hardscaping goes, we talked about natural history. So make sure it kind of fits with whatever critter you're going to use it for. Make sure they can use it. Obviously, aesthetically pleasing is a plus, but it mostly has to benefit the animal. There was one more thing.
About hardscape specifically?
Oh, yes. Obviously, if you're harvesting anything from the wild, make sure it's pesticide and herbicide free.
Yeah.
Period.
Do not go to public parks or like.
Yes.
I also wouldn't recommend taking things from like roadsides because there could be a lot of runoff or.
If it's anywhere close to a road, don't.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Yep. And if it's like on like a nicely mowed lawn or things that are like obviously there's a lot of man traffic, don't just avoid that.
503 says Pangea is doing a Black Friday sale on bulk cork.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Lots of deals on cork right about now.
Let's see. I've only had my tea since January and just want to make sure I give it a good life. Yep.
Awesome.
Anything that plants get put in, eventually springtails pop up. I have 2 species in my desert beetle tank and I put 0 in there intentionally.
Yep, they do find their way. But that just goes to show you how sneaky some of these bugs can be. So
Jeff says this sounds bad, but when I'm assuming he means wild spider egg sacs. Spider egg sacs from the wild hatching in enclosure is very annoying.
Yes.
We have so many false widows all over this room.
Not from necessarily things that, I mean, they just find their way in. Like, we're in the woods, so that just comes with the territory.
And June says, how to deal with dust mites? Probably dust more. Yeah,
probably clean your room, when June.
Do y'all have any local tarantulas where you live?
No, we do not.
I think, isn't it Missouri?
Yeah,
as
Missouri
far
would be
east
the
as they
closest.
come.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we got a lot of giant wolf spiders and
there's a lot of spiders here.
Here.
A lot of really cool
white huntsmen.
Yep. We have really cool like lichen colored huntsmen too that are in the mountains.
Good idea, Munchie.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to plants. I think this is.
Oh, that's cool. Anyway,
I think this is the biggest question when it comes to bioactive. Well, the second biggest question is where do I get safe plants? How do I know the plants are safe? Can I just go to my local Lowe's or Home Depot?
Nicole, yes, I'm sorry. This camera or this microphone that we're using picks up all the noises everywhere, and it is indeed crickets.
That is crickets, guys. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll try to talk over them. We'll get that fixed for the next stream. Like I said, we had technical difficulties right when we started. So let's talk about plants. That's the biggest question we get is where do I source my plants from? How do I know they're safe? What plants are safe for my spiders? So let me answer that question first. There really aren't too many plants that you can't not use. I would say the biggest things to stay away from would be carnivorous plants and cacti.
And herbs.
Herbaceous,
or aromatic herbs.
Aromatic herbs. I think the best advice I can give you, the simplest advice I can give you is just Google terrarium plants.
Yeah.
But just to name some places you can go to BioDude, you can go to Frog Daddy online, Glassbox Tropicals. But if you just Google terrarium safe plants, those plants are herbicide, pesticide free. They're going to be planted in soil that you can just plant right in your box if you wanted to.
Or follow the directions provided by people who sell them to you, because I think most of them do recommend you change the soil. But
okay, yeah, you can strip them down to bare root if you want to, and plant them. The little plants that we sell, these are all potted in our Mega Mix, FYI, so you can just plant that right in your box.
503, that's interesting. We had some friends that were looking around in the Atlanta area this summer and found tons of Joros, tons of them. So I think they are.
Apparently they're around. I wish I could see one.
Reproducing.
Yeah. Some plants that do really well for us here, obviously begonia. This is, again, you try to match the plant with the species that you're going to plant in the box with, but begonia, pothos, tradescantia, ferns tend to do really well for us. Certain ferns for the most part, but those are kind of like our big four, and that's what I would recommend. They seem to do really well with the spiders. Some of the terrestrial spiders, like the little girl I'm about to rehouse here in a minute, they like to tear the foliage. They just like to shred it, which can happen.
Plucks the leaves right off of my nice, expensive begonias.
Yeah. They do that.
Drop some in her water dish.
Just for fun. Yeah. And let's touch on that too. So a lot of people say don't use plants with spiders. They're just going to web over them. They're just going to destroy the plants. that's not very nuanced or black. It's not that black and white. That's not really the way it works. Again, give your spiders somewhere to go so that they don't feel the need to web up the whole enclosure unless that's what you're after. Give them less. That's what they'll do. But give them some hardscape. Give them a place to hide. Get the mycorrhizal fungi in there to give your plants some hardy roots. The plants will adjust once they establish. They'll be fine.
Plus, even if they do destroy the plant or mess around with the dig out from under it, that's okay. That's enrichment. Yeah. Yep. And your plant might die.
Yeah.
It happens.
Don't put expensive we lose some plants sometimes. Yeah. Don't
with the spiders necessarily, unless you got it really figured out.
Yeah, unless you really know what you're doing, you can get into orchids and you can do all sorts of fun stuff.
Normal part of bioactive transplant.
Correct. So that's not a reason to not do this. The hobby likes to say silly things sometimes.
Wayne says I have super neglected my Haworthia, still technically alive.
Yeah. See, all it takes is that little rhizome, man.
Yeah.
So plants are pretty straightforward. Also consider the amount of lighting that it needs. Why don't we just jump right into a couple more things before we'll jump into lights. Lastly, leaf litter. We incorporate leaf litter in just about everything that we do. The animals use it. It's good for the microfauna. Leaf litter breaks down and feeds the soil. So leaf litter is also very aesthetically pleasing. So we usually recommend like hardwood. So if you're going to use like any oak is really good. Magnolia leaves, sea grape, maple's good. Yep. So stick to hardwoods. If you're going to take them from outside, just like I said, bake them real quick. Just save yourself the hassle. But live oak is pretty good. It breaks down slow. Hopefully they can't hear that.
I'm sure.
The mister going off. But leaf litter is cool. Just right on the top of the soil. The animals use it. A lot of arboreal species will incorporate it in their web hammocks and things like that.
Fossorial species will line the entrance of their burrows with it.
Especially really like Herpactira pulchripes.
Yes,
Diva matha will.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's a really easy enrichment item, and it's very aesthetically pleasing, and it just kind of like fits the bioactive theme. So see how this all kind of flows together. Lastly, before we get to lighting, like misting, so water, we talked about that. Like I said, Jess and I are misting by hand. We have in the past seasonally cycled some of our Poecilotheria species with like a monsoon season, so we've used automated misting. You don't have to do things by hand, nor do you have to have an automated mist system. Automation makes things easier, but you also have to pay attention. I just say stick to misting by hand. I think the biggest thing is with a lot of our spiders, we do mist every day because that's just kind of like one of those naturally occurring things that happens in the wild for them, and that drives them to drink. We just want to make sure that we're not oversaturating the environment because, again, this is a contained system, so we want to watch for condensation. We want to maybe feel the soil, make sure it's not too wet all the time. So just light mists. That will benefit the plants too.
Jeff says, how about bamboo leaves? Bamboo leaves would probably be fine. Yeah. I also like willow oak. It looks Willow's a lot good. Like bamboo leaves, but willow oak is a good thick leaf too.
Yeah, bamboo is good. Willow's good.
Had a 12 on 12 off nano LEDs using to simulate day night, but I've noticed that I didn't really seem to care about the light. Should randomly be out at 10 a.m. with the light on.
Yes. So let's jump into light. Notice how you don't see this spider, right? She's hiding. She feels safe. This is the time where she's supposed to wake up. We are rudely keeping her light on for your viewing pleasure. We are affecting her cycle for this, but we won't be much longer. So lighting, I'm going to go ahead and just drop a few names that I really like. On top of this girl is a Thrive Ecosystems light. Colby makes awesome stuff. He's a small hobbyist. The one thing I really like, I like two things about Thrive Ecosystems. One, they are dimmer compatible. Okay, see what's going on there? Poor spider. That's good for a number of reasons. You can adjust, obviously, the light output, but with that output comes heat output. So it's no secret, Jess and I are of the belief that the hobby keeps their spiders too cool, a little too cold. But so we like heat output, especially toward the top of their enclosure. Doesn't matter the species, but we also want to be able to regulate that. We want to be in control of that, and not just for the spider, but for the plants too. You know, you don't want to cook anything in the box. So Anytime you can get an LED that is compatible with a dimmer switch, I highly recommend that. So check out Thrive Ecosystems. You can also, we use a lot of rack systems here. Actually, the majority of what we use is a rack system. So with Baker's rack, not a snake rack. No, we do not keep our spiders in snake racks. Baker's rack. Yep. So with that, we use like linear T8 LED grow lights. They get a little bit warm. They're really bright. Those are made by Barina. Hi, Kay. But with the lighting, obviously, we want to be able to make sure they don't get too hot, but we do like a little bit of heat. And then we obviously want to match the brightness level with the plants. It's really not that complex. But again, anytime you can get a dimmer switch, now you're in control of just about everything. So
Wayne, that phenomenon that you're talking about, being out at 10 a.m. right under the light, that's something that we see all the time.
Pretty much every morning.
A lot of our arboreal species, maybe not so much the pokies, but the avix and carabina, very frequently they come out and bask under that light. It could be more of a temperature thing versus the light thing. Yeah,
it's likely because they're not just going to expose themselves in the light without being driven with, so I'm a broken record, but bright light in the wild means heat. So these animals are driven to expose themselves and bask outside of their burrows in the morning when there's bright light. It just makes sense that heat would be coming from that. It's a very simple concept. I know the hobby struggles with it, but that's another reason why our hollows or whatever we're building for the spiders goes all the way to the top so they can get close to that heat while still being close to their burrows.
It goes almost all the way to the bottom, but you can't see in this.
Yeah, so just as much as we want them to warm themselves, we want them to be able to cool themselves as well. Thermoregulation. That's what spiders do. We'll talk about that later.
And we do have 2 videos on heating and lighting on our YouTube page if y'all aren't familiar with those yet. You're welcome to watch.
It's very cringe, but it does get the point across. So if you want to watch those, go ahead.
A lot of time.
Jess did a great job. It's me who screwed it up. Okay, so we're coming down to the wire here, but then we're going to start building stuff. So let's see. So all of this, I think, enhances the captive environment, the captive welfare of the spider, the experience of the spider. So in the wild, they have access to all of these different things, all these different textures, photo periods. The plants grow with the spiders. It changes the environment. Especially with arboreal species, we notice they really like to drink off of foliage, which is what the plants provide as well. And I mean, it's beautiful. You can't tell me that this is not more aesthetically pleasing and more enjoyable than a shoebox with coconut fiber. Like it just, I don't know. Everyone feels differently, but I'm just telling you, like this just looks nicer.
If you want it to look nicer, here's your guide.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of benefits to the spiders too. Yeah, so, and it's really not complicated. Like I said, this is a 4-year-old tank. It sits on the shelf. We just add water to it every once in a while, and no problems.
Had to remove babies from this enclosure multiple times.
Yeah, we've had babies in there. I forgot about that. And look, the plant survived all that. So yeah, as I'm seeing a little gnat fly around in there. But that's just part of it. So, we talked about cleaning glass and surfaces, how often to maintain, pretty minimal. But that's, again, you got to just be mindful of how much water you're adding.
That's another question that we get a lot, and I see a lot, is how often do you do a full substrate change and stuff like that? Want to cover that? No?
There's just, rarely.
We pretty much never do, unless I might have done it one time for one versicolor just because I didn't like the cork tube that she had.
Yeah.
Just refresh the enclosure.
A refresh is not a bad thing, but like once a year, maybe.
No.
I'm just talking about in general.
Maybe add a little bit to the top.
Some people want the maintenance. They want to do it. Okay, if you want to do it. But I would just let the plants be your guide. Let the animal be your guide. I mean,
Yeah, I might add a fresh layer of leaf litter once.
Yeah, refresh the leaf litter for sure. Yeah. But I'm telling you right now, the heart and soul of all of this is a good soil. Yeah. Yep. I don't care where it comes from. It's just that is the heart and soul of a bioactive enclosure. And that's going to, I wouldn't necessarily use a tropical soil mix for like an arid species. That's kind of arid. We'll talk about arid later. I think because there's some little more nuance to an arid enclosure. Same concept.
But you can do bioactive arid enclosures for sure.
Yep. If you had that question, you absolutely can.
Yes, bioactive has been used synonymously with tropical, and that's not it necessarily. You can certainly do temperate and arid bioactive enclosures.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So
there was something. Oh, you want to talk about fertilizing?
Yeah. So historically, we've always used a natural organic fertilizer. It's a liquid that you dilute that we put in there maybe once every few months.
The main ingredient is like fish meal, so
it's like an ocean fish based. It's not harmful to the spiders.
Yeah.
But my good friend Mike at Glassbox Tropicals just let us know during a live stream to maybe consider not fertilizing. Because in a closed system, unless you have like a flow through system, because most fertilizers use salts, and the salts definitely do accumulate in the soil and they don't go anywhere. So I got to do a little more research on that, but that's just a little factoid for you. I would say use leaf litter, use Microfauna, let the Microfauna break down the leaf litter, and that will feed the plants. And then you don't have to worry
soil itself is nutritious, or a proper bioactive soil should be nutritious in itself too.
Yep. We use a lot of we use organic compost in ours. We use hardwoods in ours. We use all sorts of goodies in there. So I would say don't worry about it. So. You want to build something?
Sure.
You guys want to build something? Let's build something. Let's see.
Hopefully we don't get an echo.
Yeah, we might get an echo, but we're gonna do our best. So let's see. Let me get this camera set up here.
Show the So you're gonna show us?
Yeah,
in that?
I'll show her in here. Just give me a second, guys.
So just so you guys all know, I hate Xenestus species. This was Ryan's idea.
I prefer Xenestus, Pamphilbedius, and Therafosa as far as terrestrials go. I just like their behaviors. Jessica does not like them. They're another one that needs they need somewhere to go. That's just, they really need that.
And you'll see this female kicked up quite a lot of her abdomen hair.
Yes, don't judge me. Our Xenestus and Pamphos do not have bald butts ever. This is because she did not want to come out of her box.
Yes.
Which I don't blame her.
Did invade her space. But it was time to give her an upgrade.
Yeah. She's going to be ready to breed if she's not already. So we figured this is the right time to do this.
Wenjun, how do you feel about Xenestus? How did you want me to put you on solo layout?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, guys, tell me if you hear an echo. I hear an echo. It's very annoying. Okay.
I can always move that away a little bit. Well, I will see. We got 15 people watching.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do this build. I've already kind of laid it out. These are things that I found outside that I'm going to use. And I'll give you guys a different view once I'm done building this. But this is a 10-gallon tank. Real quick, because I know someone's going to ask, what are you going to do about the screen? Because tarantulas get their toes caught. Let me see how close I can get this. So these screens, I think this is made by Zilla.
Yeah, I think so.
But the space in between the grid is large enough to where the tarantula claws cannot get stuck.
Plus, the wires don't overlap the way that some other screen does. And I feel like sometimes the toe claws get stuck where the screen overlaps, like the two wires meet. And that stuff doesn't quite work like that. It's like welded kind of. I don't know what the word is. When June says, "Oh, like any spider that requires me to wear gloves," I agree.
This is not for the spider. I'm not going to be handling the spider. I don't do that. This is because I don't want to get dirty. So I have this really cool piece of wood here that I'm going to use for the hardscape, as well as a rock. So I want to give a shout out real quick to the YouTube channel Bird Spider CH. I forget this gentleman's name. I'm sorry. But he has natural history content of Xenestus species blue. So,
and a bunch of other species.
And a bunch of other species. But he actually showed this species, yes, she's ready to molt, in the wild, talked about their natural history, talked about how he keeps them. And that information is so valuable. And that's what kind of gave me the idea for this build. So where this species come from, they're from Colombia, mountain ranges, and it's not a lowland tropical forest. It's actually a little more arid and mild temperatures. So I feel good about the screen. I don't need to restrict a whole lot of airflow to keep humidity in. I'm going to miss daily, but I feel pretty good about the open screen top. And then I do have a rock in here because these guys live in between rocks in the wild. Again, you can check out this. We'll actually put the video I'm talking about in the description down below. Yeah. But they do live kind of in between these boulders. Now, the problem with big, heavy rocks is that they're big, heavy rocks. And you could see how that could be a problem with glass or acrylic. It's just a big ass rock. So I only am going to use one, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I'm basically going to build up the soil and kind of make a cave. See, this is kind of like a really cool, it's a really cool piece of wood, but I'm going to make a little cave.
When June says I can feel the hairs right here.
Yep, I know. Trust me. So I'm going to start building, and I'm just going to show you guys what this turns out like. So I'm using a modified version of our Mega Mix soil. I say that because I kind of took all the things that make it a little more tropical out of it. The foundation is still there, and I added sand. So look at all these different particulates. This is what I'm talking about. I like to use this stuff because this is easy for them to excavate. It's got charcoal in it, but you can see, I think you can see a lot more sand content. And I did that because of, again, the natural history of the spider. So I'm just going to start filling this up and we'll see it take shape. You have to kind of use, when you're doing bioactive builds, you kind of use your x-ray vision a little bit, kind of imagine what things are going to start looking like. Hopefully I don't run out of soil here.
Wayne says, I wish I knew then what I know now about setting up a good enclosure.
If you, well, that just takes time, man. I mean, that's just...
It's never too late to improve.
I had to do it. We've had to do it for a living. We had to like learn fast and be good at it. And luckily, Jess and I were just surrounded by people who were really talented, so we were able to like really take notes.
Yeah, and making zoo exhibits is a challenge in and of itself because you got to make it look good and be functional and work for the animals that are in it. And you got people who have never worked a second with animals in their life, and they're like, I can't see it, so you gotta fix it. Tarantulas make terrible zookeepers.
Yep, I don't. Yeah, because if you notice, if you ever go to a zoo, I mean, I've seen some really good ones, but a lot of times it's a bare enclosure, and they just want the animal out. Yeah. And they don't give them somewhere to go.
Blue bomber. Favorite species? That's really tough for me. It's really tough for me. Old world species have my heart for sure, although I do like my avix and my aviculariinae, but Birupies are on my list for sure. Formicocylus species, I love them. Asian arboreals, pokies, all the pokies, I love them. Don't care what other people think. Any enclosure I set up is a good enclosure. Good job, Wendy.
Just going to show you guys up close. See all the different particulates in there.
Get closer. Can you get closer to the camera without? Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Lots of different. I really like this hardwood. This is natural hardwood mulch that's been milled several times, so it's not sharp.
Yeah. 503 says the zoo by me has awful enclosures for the herps. Not great. My poor kids have to listen to me complain every time we go. What zoo is that? I'm curious if you don't mind naming them. I've actually seen some pretty bad examples, even at AZ accredited zoos for their herp sections.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is
still improving.
Not all zoos are created equal.
Yeah. Ryan really liked that piece of wood.
Oh, you're gonna like it when I show you the other view here. Just gonna have a nice little cave.
Yeah. It's dried out a little bit too, so it's not as like brightly colored.
Yeah. So my plan is that she can kind of come up off this rock here. It's kind of pretend, but she can come up off this rock and go into this little cave here. I am making a mess out of this table.
Just picking. The Oregon Zoo, really? That's so sad. That isn't a part of the zoo, I think. Man,
Well,
that's a shame. Always hoping to improve. Like my Cresties at home have bigger and better bibs than they do. Yikes.
Well, it's just, the thing is, guys, is at zoos, it's only as good as their experience. You know what I mean? They might not know, they got the job. They just might not know.
Yeah.
They might not know.
Boomer Exotic says, yo.
Hey, what up, Dalton? So see, guys, so what I'm going to do here is make a slope. So the soil will kind of be up here and work its way down. If you look at a lot of content of these spiders in the wild, they do tend to inhabit like hills, embankments, slopes, and their burrows go into those slopes. So I try to incorporate that in all of our builds for terrestrial species.
A little fun fact while Ryan's building that, they're the psychedelic earth tiger, H. divamatha. They find them in the dozens, just feet away from roads on the embankments that they build to create roads. A little interesting niche that they found there. 503 says rest of the enclosures are good though, just the little herps.
Yeah, and that could just be, in some zoos, it might sound a little backwards, but the people taking care of the herp enclosures might not be reptile people either. Yeah, that happens a lot.
For sure.
I found this other little piece of wood here I'm going to try to incorporate.
Yeah, when I was a herp keeper, I was reading some old literature when I was doing an event, just supervising, and I read something that was published in the 2000s that said we don't recommend that you vary a snake's diet because it might make them picky.
What?
I told you about that, didn't I? Is it like a publication from the 2000s?
I thought you said vary.
No, vary a snake diet because it might make them picky. Not gone to a zoo or aquarium in years, but I don't think I would enjoy them knowing what I know about proper husbandry. When you might be surprised, depending on the zoo, there are a lot of really great zoos out there, especially for herps and inverts. Discord army is coming. Mine is a picky ass, won't eat any fruit. She'd rather bite my fingers.
And so too, because I want her to utilize this, I'm gonna kind of entice her by starting her little cave here. But here's something to keep in mind. Sometimes they don't do what you want them to do. I'm sure most of you guys know that. And then I kind of position this to where right about here is where those grow lights will sit. And so if she wants to get warm, she can come up here. If she wants to cool down, she can just disappear down there. And hopefully there's like a 10-degree gradient right there. Yeah. And so what I'm shooting for is hopefully like just over 80 degrees outside the burrow, and then inside the burrow, maybe mid-70s. And we talked about seeing them in the morning. That's one way to do it. Yeah. All right, we're getting there. But you see, guys, this is a very simple bioactive setup, and it will function just like any other multi-$1,000 really complex. And this is not, you can see this is not taking me really any time at all. Almost done. I'm going to put this up here.
Emotional support.
Now, ideally, for plants for this, I would use some sort of grass, like, I don't know, some sort of arid grassy species, because that's what I'm seeing
in those videos for this species. It's just really, really grassy. And yeah, in Situ, sorry, I don't know why I was having a hard time with that. But I don't have anything. I might add it later, but for now, good old Tradescantia is going to do the job.
Oh, you should get some. I'll get some for you. You should plant that with some sphagnum.
Okay. Yep, so what Jess is going to do is go grab some sphagnum, which is really good when you're transplanting. Just kind of bundle the plant root in it. It just kind of acts like a little safety net.
Especially if you're going to keep the enclosure a little more.
Yeah, and this being a more arid setup, which it's not a fully arid setup, but one thing too, guys, when you're building bivs, the soil over time will settle. So I try to press it down a little bit just to kind of give that a head start. But like you'll be like, oh, okay, that's nice and full, and then in a month it will start to settle. I mean, that happens in the wild. That happens here. And again, once I'm done with this, I'll give you guys a better view of this whole thing. But I'm really liking how this is coming out. We got a nice gradual slope. Got a nice cave started. Hopefully she uses it. And right now, all I'm doing is just kind of making everything look aesthetically nice. Just kind of blending everything together.
Aesthetically nice.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Got 15 people up in amazing.
Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. And hopefully no one's complained about an echo yet, have they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I think I'm about there. So like I mentioned earlier, you can use rocks. I have a Solaris tank over there.
Solaris.
The female. Oh, Pamphobedius Solaris. Where I've got lots of rocks. But you have to be really careful because, again, it's rocks and they're heavy. So you want to make sure, like, when everything settles and the spider's doing spider things, that rocks don't fall. Just want to be safe.
Audio has been immaculate the entire show. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it, man. All right.
Maybe we'll use this microphone more often.
Yeah, I guess so.
Except for the crickets.
Yeah, see how that's like really settling? I can push that down. I don't know. You guys can't see it, but I can.
We just gotta kick the crickets out.
Okay. All right. So I think that's good enough. Now, Microfauna. So I have a mix here. I don't know if you guys can ever see it. I got a mix of dwarf whites and springtails.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to use this whole thing. You can see them zipping around in there.
Yeah. Ooh.
So I think I will just kind of put some down here.
So for a 10-gallon tank, this is also a pretty common question. How many isopods do you recommend for an XYZ size tank?
All it takes is 2.
Now let's interview the spider. Yeah, so for a 10-gallon tank, I would recommend at least 100 dwarf whites. The more you put in there, the faster they will reproduce, but that's not necessarily something that you need to like put 1,000 individuals in there to get faster growth or anything like that. 100 would probably be fine for a 10-gallon tank. At least put 25 in a smaller tank, and they'll reproduce over time.
All right.
We have a Solaris female and a subadult male. Nice to know, Michelle. Definitely send us an email. We're always looking for males.
Yeah, for real. Please stay in touch. The U.S. needs to make those, and we need to get it right. We all need to work together. Yeah.
They've only been produced once that we know of, and there was only a grand total of like 6 spiderlings. As an Estes, they're all juveniles. They seem to like constantly moist soil. If enclosures get dry, they dig down in the corners and pin themselves in. Interesting.
All right. Now, I've noticed with Xenestus, they don't necessarily like leaf litter, or they tend to like evacuate it all.
Yes.
And I didn't see much leaf litter at all, at least for this species. Now, Xenestus intermedia is a lowland species from Venezuela. They live on leaf litter, but I think it's pretty common for them to evacuate it from the entrance of the burrow. They just don't want it there, which is cool. But this will be cool. What I'm hoping is I'll see her on this rock quite a bit. She'll come out of the cave and hang out right here and wait for food. All right, let me take you guys off here and I'll kind of show you what this looks like. So here we are. So we kind of blended in that piece of wood.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the nice slope here. It goes all the way down. Yeah, let me move some stuff out of the way. There you go. So lots of soil depth. I don't know how much that is, but it's quite a bit.
Oh, that's a foot.
Get you in that cave. So I kind of got it started for her. I don't know what that is, but maybe she'll like that too. Nice. A piece of wood, but that's it. Disappears. Got a nice little cave. Right? And we've got our microfauna in there. So lastly, we'll get a little water dish for her. And then I'm going to show you how I rehouse my spiders.
Oh, what kind of water do we use? I don't think you covered that.
I didn't even plan it yet. Hold on. I got ahead of myself. Okay, so water, we use reverse osmosis water. If you go to the store and you get anything labeled purified drinking water. Oh, yeah. That's reverse osmosis. So that's what we use for our spiders. That's what I recommend. I know a lot of people say just use tap. I'm pretty sure if I used our tap water, they would die. It's got a lot of chlorines and chloramines in it. Our tap. But that's the problem. Like, not everyone's tap water is the same. I hate that advice. Some people have really hard water, which stains everything. So
yeah, the RO water is great just in general because it doesn't create a ton of water spots like hard water or tap water does too.
Again, I don't think this plant is necessarily the best choice for this. But if she wants to tear it apart, she can tear it apart. I don't care.
I use spring water for all my animals. Yep.
Spring water is good too. Oops, sorry guys. I'm gonna kind of shove this in there and see what she does with it.
Oh, yeah, show off these little guys now too.
What's that?
The smaller Bioactives.
I'm taking away this other hole because I don't think she's even going to use it.
She's just sat in the same place the whole time.
A shingling plant would have been a better choice because this plant likes to grow up.
Shingling plants need that super high humidity. We're not gonna.
Oh yeah, I forgot what I'm talking about here. Yeah. Okay, a little splash of color. Again, I'll probably get a grassy plant and put it here. Maybe another grassy something over there.
One of those binding begonias would be good for that too.
Yeah, that'll
climb
probably
right
be
up
right.
the hill.
All right, and yeah, I guess we'll give it a little mist here.
And fill up that water. And then when do you apply the mosquito bits?
You can do it now. So I'll show them that real quick too.
Yeah.
So light little mist in here.
Sure, the plants have some fresh water.
Yeah.
It's normal for plants to kind of not do anything for several months when you plant them in a large enclosure like this. Sometimes they tend to dedicate all of their growth to root growth. So you might not see any new growth above the soil for plants when you plant them in an enclosure like this. That's totally fine, as long as the plant's not actively dying.
Yep, if you just see, you're like, oh, my plant's not growing at all, it's just been this for months, it's probably establishing a nice root system.
Yeah.
We talked about
making friends with the fungi.
And making friends with the fungi. Get yourself these guys. These are, if you don't have these already, this is great for adding water to a water dish. This is great for adding water to soil. We talked about the mosquito bits earlier. Usually what we'll do is we'll soak a few kernels in here and just kind of do this for the through the soil like this.
So you can find more information about that. People tend to call that mosquito bits tea.
Yep.
Or you can put the kernels straight into the substrate, and as the kernels get moistened, they slowly release the things. What are they called? Nematodes. But we prefer to make the mosquito bit tea.
All right, guys, here she is. Let's get her in her enclosure.
Boy, hold your breath.
Oh yeah, she's already lifting her butt. And that's how I do it. No tricks, nothing fancy. There you go. She'll come out when she's ready. And if not, that's where she's going to hang out. Whatever. But look, I got no bites. There was no dramatics, no hair flicks. We already, no stress. Obviously, getting her in that little catch cup was stressful enough. You could see the bald booty. That was all from today. But at least as far as this part goes, all done. All right.
Yeah, we wait. And now we wait.
And now we wait. All right, you want to switch me back over?
Sure.
Yeah, let me actually, I can back out of here. All right, and we're back.
We'll let this settle in, and then I'll probably post a picture of this once it grows a little bit, and keep you guys updated. But it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. I think she's gonna like that. Piece of cake. That was not difficult, and that's a bioactive build for large, feisty little species. So I think she'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Jess? You guys have any questions for us?
Do you want to like cover arboreal species, arid species, anything else?
No, I think that's a different episode. Yeah, this is just a little bioactive too. Yeah, we'll talk about arid because that's got a little more nuance to it. We'll talk about that in another episode. But next week, we're thinking about doing a species-specific thing. Genus, yeah, let us know in the comments what you'd like us to cover. Next week, we have a species or a genus in mind, but I'd like to hear from you guys. Just let us know. But other than that, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up. We're going to turn these lights off. These animals are probably like, what is going on? We might push this stream back about an hour, or not back, move it forward an hour. Maybe we'll start it at 6 sooner. Yeah, just so that the animals can do their thing. Project Safety Net update coming really soon.
Yeah, we do
yeah, we need a poll. Maybe, hey, we'll go ahead and post that in the Spiders After Sunset social Facebook group. If you guys have not joined that yet, please do. Details on our giveaway, which is a Poecilotheria metallica, we'll post on the 1st because we're going to make that a monthly thing. So
link to that group is in the description of this video.
Yep. So links to most of the stuff I talked about in here will be in the description. Check us out online, marshallarachnids.com. Check us out on Morph Market. We're also on the Palm Street app, which is a really fun sellers platform that I think you guys are going to want to get in on if you don't know what that is already. Check us out, Spiders After Sunset Social. Until then, thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Wayne, the dimmer switch does come with the Thrive Ecosystems light, yes.
I'm pretty sure. If not, his name is Colby. Just tell him that's what you tell him you want one.
Pretty sure.
Tell him Marshall Arachnids sent us.
Yeah.
Sent you. We've sent people to him before, and now he's got some repeat customers because I'm telling you, his lights are awesome. Like, they're perfect. Perfect amount of heat, perfect amount of light. He can even customize. If you guys are real nerds, he can customize the color temperature.
I really like these because they produce a little bit more heat than your average LED too. So there are a lot of our Aviculariinae species that tend to like to be 80 plus degrees Fahrenheit during the day. It really helps achieve that temperature during the day.
Yep.
So this is Pamphobeus recommends Jeff.
Pamphobeus. Well, we do need to rehouse the Solaris male. We could talk about Panthos.
Simple first.
Maybe we'll do like
Plus,
No.
that's the only Panthobadia species we keep right now.
we don't have a whole lot. One thing at a time, guys. We like to do things slow, okay?
Yeah,
All right. I think that's gonna do it, guys. Let us know what you want us to cover next week. Until then, we love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Any questions? Send us an email. Ask us on the Facebook group.
would love to see Cereopactus or Calabrachys fossorial.
Yeah, we need to do more fossorial. I'll be honest. We're pretty guilty about not having
I have
very many
a lot
fossorial
of
species.
species that need rehousings too. Thai golden fringe, I do like that species.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Sounds good. All right, lights out, everyone. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.